A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, when nobody else cares, one person, nay, trooper, will celebrate more than a decade of Star Wars, The Force Unleashed.
Hey guys, Axelmyth here today, and today we're going to be looking at the Wii version of Star Wars The Force Unleashed, as promised. This is the second part of the series, so I highly recommend you watch the first part, as I'm going to kind of assume that you've already seen the previous part, mostly because I don't want to repeat myself too much here. This is far from my first Star Wars experience, but it is the one that impacted me most as a kid. This and Lego Star Wars, obviously. But, as I said last time, once I got a 360, I never looked back, and I always really wondered why that was. So that's kind of why we're here today. So I already talked about the stories and the characters last time. So I'm not going to go too much into detail like I said. This time I mostly wanted to focus on the differences the Wii and the 360 version have, and just kind of like the impact that some of those story changes have on the initial story that was told in the 360. So we open up about the same, except it's nighttime here. I'm not sure why such a small change, but honestly it looks pretty nice. I'd even say it looks better at nighttime. The next big change, story-wise, is after we defeat Ram Koda, Darth Vader sends us to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant for a skill test. Here we fight an Utapau Sith Lord from 1,000 years ago named Darth Desolus. Or Desolus if you're dyslexic. After that, on Raxus Prime, there's a minor character who becomes sort of a mini-boss. He's a Rhodian character. Not sure what that's about, but it's a pretty cool design anyway. The funny thing is, most of the major changes stage-wise is going to the Jedi Temple after a few stages. You go there a second time after defeating Kaz Barabbas. Pretty much the same stage, but later you take a different route. This time, you meet a shape-shifting Sith Lord named Darth Phobos. Please correct me if I said that wrong. All these stops to the Jedi Temple I do feel like enhance the storyline a little bit. They probably don't tell us anything we don't already know, but they are some cool elements that tie into the decision at the end of the game. This time after Vader tries to kill you, you don't play through his entire flagship. It's all one long cutscene. Again, not really sure why that is. There are 13 stages in this game, and I don't know why it would have killed them to add one more. Not a big thing, but it was one of the smaller reasons I wanted to have the 360 version. Right after that, we get a location switch. This was something I knew I was going to bring up. So in the last review, I was questioning how Koda got to the Cloud City. This time, I feel like the Wii version fixes this problem, with the planet being Nar Shaddaa, the planet where you met him the first time. Again, in the long run, it probably doesn't really matter, but the Wii version always made more sense for this part of the story. Before running out into the galaxy collecting senators and such, we take one more break back at the Jedi Temple. Seriously, you'd think this would be enough. Again, same stage that goes into a different route, except this time, we don't fight a Sith Lord at the end. We fight an apparition of Starkiller's father. I mean, every Sith Lord we've met here has been an apparition. Anyway, this is something else I really wanted to talk about. This particular stage eventually became DLC for other versions of the game. The difference is here, instead of fighting your father like some sort of Shakespearean play, in the DLC alternative, it's a fight against the mirror where Starkiller fights the Sith version of himself. I think both versions equally deepen Starkiller's character in their own ways. I like the symbolism more than the stage itself though. Again, I've not actually played the 360 DLC version. I have seen plenty of it though. So after this, the next actual difference is on Raxus Prime. For some reason, they got rid of the proxy fight. Instead, we fight the Shadow Guard again. Granted, he doesn't show up in this game nearly as much, but still a little disappointing that that plotline doesn't do anything this time around. Actually, come to think about it, there's dialogue in the game, but Proxy never actually tries to kill Starkiller either. Our next major difference is, yet again, another stage. After taking down the ship on Raxus Prime, we get a distress signal from Cloud City. Time to help the Senator Garmbel Iblis. He's a major player in the Rebellion and the old expanded universe. This is where we meet probably the best character in all of Star Wars, Cleef. Look at him, he's an evil Jar Jar Binks. How could anybody not like this? This game gets a 10 out of 10 just for that. Don't at me. This stage ends with a two-phase fight against a Mandalorian named Chappa, a crime lord who took over Cloud City. After that, again, the game pretty much lines up, no major differences from here. I feel like the additions to this story don't add too much, but it does add to Starkiller himself. Though I'll admit, it makes him seem more like the bad guy.
Hey, if he senses who I am, he's not gonna have the chance to tell anyone.
The regular story by itself makes it obvious the good ending is the actual ending. This is sort of a complaint I have with the Xbox version, but some of the added stuff balances it out by making the decision at the end feel less out of character. It feels more like your decision, but since you are playing a character, I don't know how much sense that makes. Still cool nonetheless. I like the balance this stuff makes. But it does come with its flaws though. There are just too many one-time side characters, and honestly, most of it feels like fluff. Content for content's sake, making the story have this weird sort of flow. The main characters themselves don't change much, but there are some of these voice lines that seem like alternate takes. Like this one I noticed from a long time ago when I was a kid.
As will I.
I thought you were passed out in the cargo hold.
I finally came to.
As will I.
I thought you were passed out in the cargo hold.
I finally came to.
And of course, to account for the extra stages, there are extra lines as well. But I do wonder what happened behind the scenes that we got the alternate takes for what is supposed to be the same scene. Did the Xbox team just not let the Wii team have their voice clips? Were these re-recorded, or did they literally just take alternate takes? That'd be an interesting thing to know. Once again, after you beat the respective endings, you unlock both the Jedi and the Sith costumes for a job well done. The biggest difference in this game from the build we looked at last time is definitely the game design itself. I mean, yeah, it's still a hack and slash Star Wars beat 'em up, but this almost feels like a totally different game. The 360 build focused more on platforming. This one focuses more on the combat, making the stage design overall more bland, by having very few, if any at all, bottomless pits. At least it tries to focus more on combat. More on that later. I end up defeating the enemies much in the same way as before, though with less malicious torture involved because this game is a bit more limited. Though later on, I did find this move I don't think is in the 360 version even. Raising someone in the air and swinging the Wiimote to hurtle nearby enemies to the poor guy. You have most of the same force abilities as before, minus the lightning shield. And you can't charge up the force repulse anymore. I really don't feel like I'm missing on much there, but it's still noteworthy. But I'm being totally honest here. Though I'd still rather use a regular controller, I actually found myself sort of enjoying the motion controls. They at least work here. Yeah, there are a few hiccups here and there, mostly with the nunchuck not registering things, a problem I remember from childhood, but credits due where credits due. The controls work. The C button is basic lightning, but it seems to drain your energy bar faster, even when maxed out. You swing the nunchuck and you will do the force push. Supposedly, if you do this holding the C button, it will shoot out a force push with lightning, but I didn't get that to work very often. The Z button is used for force grapple. I already said this, but this time it does feel a little more limiting. Before you used the two sticks to move the 3 axes, but this time you hold up the nunchuck to raise your victim, while the joystick does the rest. My problem is that it would basically let you fling them all over as long as they were in range. When you grab them, you automatically go to the regular height, and when you hold the nunchuck up, it will raise them slightly higher. But what else is that they got rid of the doll physics, so it's just not as interesting anymore. But for what it loses, it gains something. If you swing down the Wiimote while holding them, they will slam into the ground. And as for the move I talked about earlier, you swing the Wiimote and items and enemies nearby will fly towards your target. It's quite entertaining to see. Again, still not as interesting, but it is something. While someone is in your grasp, you can also hold B and swing the Wiimote to throw your lightsaber at them, impaling them just like before. You can do that without holding someone, All you do is hold the trigger B button and swing the Wiimote, but I didn't find myself using it that much because it wasn't as accurate. You fight by swinging your Wiimote, and I have to say, the gestures controls really aren't bad here. I'd say it's a little cumbersome attempting to do actual combos with this thing, assuming you can even do combos in this game. I haven't been able to tell, honestly. Like I stated, this game tries to be more combat oriented, but I still end up using the force more than physical combat. The 360 version made sure you at least knew what to press to get different combos going. You power all your stuff just like before, except this time you don't unlock saber combos or make Starkiller stronger. Nope, you have to find upgrades hidden in every level to do that. In each stage you will find a HOLOCRON, and they look very similar as before, except this time there are 3 kinds instead of 2. There are blue ones that raise your force gauge and also green ones that raise your life gauge. I like these inclusions, but I do wish they gave you some sort of number on these for completion's sake. Not a completionist myself, but I don't know if I maxed out Starkiller's force and life by the time I got through this game twice. The last kind you can find is just like the HOLOCRONs in the next gen version, the box ones. They serve a very different purpose this time around. They unlock concept art for this build of the game, viewable at the Rogue Shadow menu before every stage. I'm sure the other team used the character art for this, but most of these seem to be for this particular build. Not gonna lie, I wish more games did this. There's also just generally more here, 201 to be exact, compared to the 115 of the next gen versions. It's really cool and all, but again, this is one of those I wish they showed a number of how many of these there are exactly in a stage. Back in the day, I was going for 100% and gave up around 170-ish because those last 30 were just not having it. It really didn't help. This game had me think it wanted me to play it 3 or 4 times to get every single one of them. Again, this is something the game doesn't tell you at all, but from what I could tell, and I could be wrong here, but it seems like the more you destroy, the more likely you are not only to find, but unlock the ability to find new HOLOCRONs. But again, I honestly have no idea. I found just over 180 this time around, and that's going roughly through each and every stage, destroying everything I possibly could find. I assume there's some sort of in-game challenges you have to complete. The game's not specifying, which is sort of irritating. The art is really good though, just throwing that out there. The concept art I feel like is pretty worth it. The costumes are also back with almost every one of them, with 2 noticeable ones missing. Starkiller's Jedi clothes before sacrificing himself, and of course the hospital garb from Vader's medical ship. All of the costumes you unlock after certain stages. But can we talk about that unlocking order? At first, it seems fine, you unlock them like normal, but then you end up going onto a planet literally raining acid in jungle clothes made for Kashyyyk. Then using survival gear on City in the Clouds where you probably don't need it anymore. This might seem like a small complaint, but my thing is, if you're going to add costumes like this in a game where you unlock costumes every other stage for beating said stage, they either need to A, fit the story, or B, add some sort of benefit for the character. Even if they were extras you could find, that would be fine. This is where I think the 360 version does get it right, because finding the other costumes is a benefit you get as the player. A way to sort of show off that you explored, I guess. Even Jedi Fallen Order does this, despite the clothes on Cal Kestis not changing much except the color. But in this game, it doesn't present itself even as bragging rights that you explored. The costumes are automatically unlocked, and after it made sense for you to have them nonetheless. But anyway, once again, there's even more hidden costumes behind a password. This time it's Grand Moff, and doing so will unlock a ridiculous amount of character costumes. It actually has a good amount of movie characters here. They even had Mara Jade, someone from the EU to my surprise. But there's also a bunch of characters from this game, such as Champa and that Rodian I mentioned earlier. I also love trying to find characters that just don't make sense. Like, I could have sworn this game or the other version had C-3PO, and I just find that so funny. But also, again, I love the fact that you can be a stormtrooper beating the hell out of other stormtroopers. But I did that in the wrong stage this time, so I ended up doing what looks like an awful Star Wars fanfic. Zombie robots versus a dark, lonely, edgy stormtrooper. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't love the fact that you could also be Cleef. Like, isn't this what Jar Jar would look like if he were a Sith Lord? See, Disney? Look how interesting this can be! There are also a bunch of lightsaber hilts you can find throughout a few of the stages. 10 in all. I think most of them are actually from this game, with the rest sort of being like Easter eggs. They don't add anything but aesthetic, but it is a really cool option, I find. Once again, you can change the color of your lightsaber, though I'm sure you've noticed by now, last time the different colors came in different styles. But this time around, they're brighter and darker versions of red, blue, green, purple, and yellow. No Darksaber this time though, so that's really disappointing. Thanks for ruining this game. Once again, there's power crystals that give you different abilities. I don't really have much to say about them this time. They're exactly as advertised. They only give strength in certain places. The graphics of this game, oh god, the graphics. To be fair here, this is by far not the worst looking Wii game of all time. But take the stiffness from last time and yank off that knob. Guess I shouldn't have expected too much, but then again, Nintendo had this figured out by now, creating some amazing looking games. But for this time, I often wonder if they were reusing assets from other Star Wars games, but I guess we'll never know for sure. Just saying, these do not look good for today's standards, or at the time for that matter. Since I'm playing on an HD TV with a game that was built for a CRT TV, I did notice during the cutscenes there's this odd, weirdly meshed look to some of the sets and the backgrounds. No, this isn't emulation, this is just playing a Wii game on a Wii U. The replay value all depends on what you missed during your first playthrough. Though I've never thought all 201 holocrons were worth it, it could be to you. Though this game does not have a stage select, which is irritating, so you'll have to at least beat it a second time for completion anyway. The cutscenes are actually pretty awesome in this game. See, they aren't pre-rendered here, so whatever costume you have on during the stage, that's the one you'll have during the cutscene.
Keep the ship cloaked and wait beyond scanner range.
I have a really bad feeling about this.
Then we must be doing something right.
Am I going to see you again?
If I can free the rebels, they'll need extraction. Probably not, no.
I've always found that type of thing cool. It makes things feel more customizable. That is, unless you are any character besides Starkiller. Then they won't play at all. I mean, like I said before, I don't mind it. Otherwise, you're sitting through the cutscene until it decides you can skip it usually. But actually, in this build, it is not a problem here. This game will let you skip by pressing the minus button at any point. I cannot tell you how much of a blessing this is on repeat playthroughs. So all of this has me feeling a bit mixed on the experience. I did feel a little bored just swinging the Wiimote around mindlessly, but at the same time with the added stages, and how these are still pretty long, some of them even rivaling their 360 counterparts, this version tends to feel like the more complete experience, or less rushed, I should say. Maybe it's the lack of a stage select, but on its own, this game is still longer than the next-gen version. This game still has its flaws, but I would say that this version is still worth checking out today. I've been wondering how they get some of these controls to work on a PS2 controller, so I hope to get to that at some point. And oddly enough, as a side note, this version of the game is also for the PSP, so I've really wondered how that works. Unfortunately, I played this game to death before I had a chance to even try out the PSP version. But wherever you can find it, I would say try this one out. So once again, I have to say that this was my Shadows of the Empire. So wherever you can find it, I'd say try it out. It's not great, but it's still really decent. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to blast that subscribe button and ignite that bell icon to keep up to date for future videos. Leave a comment. Tell me what you thought about this game, and please like this video if you like this, obviously. But I guess that's it for this time. I'll see you next time when I review Star Wars: The Force Unleashed 2 for the 360. See ya. I'd like to give a special shout out to Ross Mahon for letting me use his Jedi Temple footage of the DLC. Link in the description below.